So I thought today I was going to talk about obviously what's going on in Iran at the moment, the Iranian deal that we've seen, and so yeah, I want to talk about that. So for me, um, it looks like hi everyone from Mary, cold Melbourne day. Yes, it's actually Mary's from Melbourne in Australia, and actually it's pretty cold in Brisbane where I am in Australia as well. And we're in a much warmer area because we're sort of more north of Melbourne. Um, but yeah, so today I thought I'd discuss um, the MOU, sorry, Memorandum of Understanding between the United States and Iran. And look, you can already tell what it's going to be like. Hi, Assemblywoman Deborah Mazari, thanks for joining. You can already tell what it's going to be like because all the people who were very pro-Trump when Trump first went into Iran, people like Ted Cruz, people like Marco Rubio, people like Mark Levine, people like Laura Loomer, Ben Shapiro, all these type of people who were really cheerleading Trump into going into Iran. They've all started to be a little bit cautious. They're all starting to backpedal on Trump. Lindsey Graham is another one as well. And what you're seeing is people like JD Vance, who's less of an interventionist, is now sort of coming out, and it's JD Vance is now the one who's kind of spruiking the New Deal or the New Deal that might happen between Iran and that, and that's because that also shows that this deal is not accepted by a lot of the sort of more pro-Israeli groups in the Republican government. So there's a lot of there's going to be a lot of pushback, I think. So I think Trump overnight he was at the he was in Europe and he was at a conference and he was talking about the fact that he about Israel bombing Lebanon. And one of the interesting things that he said was, well, the problem with Israel is, thanks Sandra for joining. The problem with Israel is when Israel goes into Lebanon, especially the south, especially Beirut. Hi Sandra, especially Beirut. What they find is that a lot of the people, a lot of places that get bombed, thanks Nancy, there's a lot of civilians in there, and a lot of those civilians will get killed along with, say, a Hezbollah person. Now, this is something a lot of people have criticized for a long time about Israel. So, but the fact of the matter that Trump actually said that, and he said that while he, publicly, goes to show that Trump is trying to distance himself from Israel to some degree, and is trying to now pivot back to being an anti-interventionist. He's trying to go back to what people thought of him before the war in Iran, and that's where he had he had some support amongst people who were quite anti-war. So it's interesting that Trump is trying to pivot again back to pretending like he's not really the guy who bombed Iran by criticizing. Good luck with that. Yeah. Look, it's not going to work. Look, the fact of the matter is, it's probably, in a sense, a better tactical position for Trump. I don't think it's going to work, but it's a better tactic because the Lindsey Grahams, the Ben Shapiros, right, the Mark Levines, the Laura Loomers, who were cheerleading the war in Iran, I have a feeling that these people, they will blame everyone around Trump, and they won't blame. You can already see it. Laura Loomer, who's very anti-Muslim, like she's the most anti-Muslim person in the world. It's interesting because Laura Loomer is the biggest supporter. It's like the BF or husband who cheated on way too many times. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, and look, there's always that now, Sandra. There's always that person in a relationship, um, and sometimes and Sandra, sometimes it's the woman who cheats. Okay, let's not just all blame it on the men. I'm joking. I'm joking. But sometimes it is. Sometimes it. Um, hi, Crystal. Thanks for joining. But I will say that I think in this particular case, um, yeah, in this particular case, I do think Trump won't get back as many people because the problem is a lot of people were not anti. I think there was some people who weren't really even paying attention, right? And I think, to be honest, there are probably some people who didn't really care about America bombing Iraq. It wasn't big. It wasn't big on their brain. They weren't thinking about it every day, but they started thinking about it when their gas prices went up, when food prices went up, when fertilizer price, when diesel prices went up. That's when they became more involved. So for them, it's not necessarily, oh, America shouldn't be bombing a country, right? It's not, oh my God, I can't believe it's they're bombing a country and it's affecting my gas prices. They're bombing a country, it's affecting prices. You know what I mean? That I think for a lot of people was when they went, I'm not, I don't like Trump for doing this. So because a lot of these people were cheerleading Trump when he went into Venezuela, right? A lot of people in the MAGA side loved it when he went into Venezuela and he grabbed Maduro and he brought Maduro back. No, because it didn't have a big impact on America, right? Trump, Americans doesn't care about killing human beings, only gas. Yeah, exactly. And look, Sandra, I will say sometimes it's just that people don't pay attention to politics, right? And they will only pay attention to politics um, when it's affecting them personally, right? Like the bottom line. So that's just the way it is. So I think a lot of this stuff isn't necessary. There are people who are anti-war, but I think the majority of the people, when it affects them, yeah, exactly. I think the majority of the people that turned against the war on the right-hand side, I'm talking about the right side of politics, was mostly to do with cost of living, right? Because inflation was already not great before this, and it just made it worse. And it also ties into the whole thing of Trump. Hi T, thanks for coming. It also ties into the whole thing of um, Trump is so focused on overseas things, like he's focused on what's happening overseas, but he's not concentrating enough on what's happening in America. And I think that can be a big thing that Americans don't like. When things are not going well in their own country and they see the president fixated on stuff overseas, they're like, wait a second, stop going over there and trying to do that. You got to fix problems here first. And I think that's a big part of why. And I'm talking more like independents, right wing people, right? They don't really care as much. Again, if inflation, oh, hello, hi, Levy, thanks for coming, thanks for joining. Um, I think if America was bombing Iran with Israel, and ballrooms are reflex, exactly, yeah. And exactly right, Sandra. I think if America was bombing Iran, and it didn't affect prices in America, I don't think people would care. I'm just being honest. I just don't think people would care as much. I don't think for most people it's a thing about bombing a country. It's a thing about bombing a country and then making things more expensive. Or bombing a country and not talking enough about your own country. So, hi Diane, thanks for joining. So, it was you are 100% sadly. Yeah, thanks, Gilda. Thanks for that. It is, and I think that's one of the reasons. That's one of the reasons why I think Trump wants out of this war. I think Trump wants out of this war because he can see the writing on the wall. He can see the midterm elections coming up. He can see that you can't win a war with Iran. You can win a military war with Iran, but you can't win an asymmetrical war with Iran. Meaning, Iran could never ever defeat America or Israel in a war, but they don't need to. All they need to do is cause havoc in the Strait of Hormuz. And all you need to do that is a couple of drones, a couple of ballistic missiles. You don't need a lot. You don't need a great military to do that. So, they can just cause trouble just by that. And of course, if you're an oil tanker or you're a ship trying to go through the Strait of Hormuz, um, even if hi Izzy, thanks for joining. Thank you so much for joining. Even if there's only a 2% chance that Iran's going to try to bomb you, a lot of shipping companies, they don't want to go through there because it will them. They all have insurance. Insurance costs a lot of money in shipping. The Strait is the ticket to control. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and in some ways, Levy, in some ways, why would Iran want to get a nuclear weapon when they have the Strait of Hormuz? Because essentially, countries like Iran would want a nuclear weapon, not because they necessarily want to use it. I don't think they would use it. I think it's to get leverage over other countries, right? They don't need that anymore because they've got leverage by just the Strait of Hormuz. And what Trump has done is that he's now, I think for a long time, a lot of countries thought Iran could do this. And I think Iran thought they could do this, but they never really tested it. This is the first time Iran has tested the Strait of Hormuz properly, right? And so what Trump has given them is something in theory. It was always a theory, but then it was never in practice. And now they know for sure that the theory of blocking the Strait of Hormuz is an extremely powerful thing. So Trump has given them a power that they weren't sure of before, because a lot of the reasons why they didn't want to block the Strait of Hormuz is because they weren't sure it was going to work. They thought it might work, but they weren't 100% sure, right? And now they know it works. So Trump has given them a lot of power. Yeah, yes, has given them exactly, Levy. Yeah, yeah. So that's exactly right. So now they have all this power that they didn't have before. They will still be able to enrich uranium, right? They're still going to be able to do that to some degree. Now, the biggest thing is Trump saying that Iran has agreed to never have a nuclear weapon. This is probably the funniest part of it, I would say, because Iran has agreed not to have a nuclear weapon since the 1970s. In fact, in the Obama JCPOA, part of the actual first part of the agreement that the Iran Obama deal literally says on the agreement that Iran agrees never to get a nuclear weapon. It's the first part of the JCPOA. You can go and Google it. Literally says that. So there is nothing different here, right? There is, in fact, there was a fatwa by the Ayatollah Khamenei years and years ago, where he said that 3.7%. Yeah, he said that he would never get a nuclear weapon. So Iran saying they're not going to get a nuclear weapon is nothing new. They've been saying that for decades. But the fact that Trump is using that, and he keeps changing it. First he said he wanted unconditional surrender, and he put it in bold letters, unconditional or on caps, unconditional surrender. And now it looks like we got something that is probably worse than Obama's deal. But even if it's the same as Obama's deal, it's still worse because in the process of trying to get the same deal as Obama, 13 American soldiers were killed. 180 Iranian schoolgirls were killed. A whole bunch of, billions and billions of dollars were used, right? And now Iran is emboldened and feels more powerful because they now know they can control the Strait of Hormuz. So to get to the same point as Obama did, it's actually 1,000 times worse because of all those other things that happened to get to it. Trump should never have torn up the JCPOA. He should never have done it. If anything, Trump could have come in and said, you know what, we're going to keep the JCPOA, but we're going to make it better, right? So he could have improved on it, right? Because it wasn't perfect. In my opinion, you can't have a perfect agreement with Iran because Iran is a very imperfect country. So again, it wasn't that the JCPOA was perfect. Everyone knows it wasn't perfect, but it was the best deal you could get. And Trump thought, you know what, rip it up and I'll come in and do it. What he should have done is he should have come in, he should have kept it and tried to make it better. And I think that would have got a lot of support from a lot of people. But again, because he wanted to be seen as this deal maker, I'm the deal maker, bang, bang, bang. And so he thought, I'll tear her up, whatever. And, again, he's now trying to distance himself from Israel. I think this also shows to some degree that, there's some people who always say that Israel controls America. I don't believe that at all. I think the whole Israel controls America is BS. I don't believe that. Because if Israel controls America, when Bibi Netanyahu went to Joe Biden and said, I want you to bomb Iran with us, he said no. When Bibi Netanyahu went to Barack Obama and said, will you help us bomb Iran? Barack Obama said no. So the fact of the matter is that the American government can say no to Israel when they want to. Trump wanted to go. Trump was convinced Trump wanted to go into Iran, and so did Israel. They both had the same set of mind, right? Trump has been talking about going into Iran for decades, since the 80s. This is not something new, right? So I think a lot of the pressure of saying Israel, of course, Israel wants America to bomb Iran. It's in their interest, right? And of course, Israel is going to put pressure on America. But at the end of the day, there were previous American presidents who said no to Israel, and Trump didn't. So, and now Trump is distancing himself from Israel. He's, as I said before, came out and he said Israel should not be bombing places in Beirut, and when they do bomb places, they're killing too many civilians. This is not something that a country that is controlled by Israel would be able to say, right? So I think people conflate those things together. You can have two countries who are allies who have the same vision, and then everyone goes, well, it's Israel. No, it's Trump. This is Trump's idea. Trump wanted to go into Iran. Trump went into Iran, right? And it was Trump that did all this. It wasn't, and everything is a knee-jerk reactionary puppet string porn foolery. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's too much of this. Trump, by making everything about Israel, you're giving Trump, you're giving Israel way too much credit, and you're taking responsibility of Trump. So if it's not Trump, by blaming Israel, you're essentially saying that it's not Trump's fault. Or he was, you know what I mean? And I don't think that's the case. I think this is 100% Trump's fault. And Trump is to blame for it. That's why I don't believe in this. The fact of the matter is, there is a lot of people in the American government who like Israel. And they don't just like Israel because of AIPAC money. They like Israel because some of these people love Israel since they were 50, like Ted Cruz. Whenever I see Ted Cruz on the internet, people will put a picture of people will put applause, yes it is. People will put a picture of AIPAC money that Ted Cruz gets, right? So Ted Cruz does get a lot of AIPAC money, but Ted Cruz was a big supporter of Israel when he was a teenager. So are we supposed to believe that Ted Cruz, Israel does not control America, but Israel has a great degree over many Americans? I think that Israel has some damn. Yeah, look, now the reason I wouldn't say now, if Israel had something on America, Trump probably wouldn't come out and say that Israel should not be bombing Hezbollah, right? Because those things don't make sense. Because you know what I mean. Like, I think Trump. I think the thing about Trump is, I think to be honest with you, I actually think he's very predictable. And the more you see Trump, the more predictable he becomes. I don't think Trump is ideological, right? I don't think he thinks in ideological terms, right? I think Trump is pro-Israel, right? I think he is pro-Israel, but I don't think he's pro-Israel because they've got something on him. I don't think he's pro-Israel because they give him money. I think he's pro-Israel because I think that's his. Remember, Trump is 80 years of age. A lot of people his age in America are more likely to be pro-Israel, and a lot of younger people are less likely to be pro-Israel. Right? So remember, his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, is Jewish. So he has, it's in his family. He has Israeli friends, all that sort of stuff. So I think sometimes it doesn't come down to that. I think with Trump will, whatever he thinks will help him, he'll do. But it's important to remember that Trump is now distancing himself from Israel. So that just goes to show that Trump, it's not that Israel owes him or owns him. It's that he used Israel when he wanted to happen, which is bomb Iran. And now he doesn't see Israel as because he wants to stay out of jail buddies. Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, Trump will do whatever he wants. He will be nice to someone like Benjamin Netanyahu, and now he's throwing Benjamin Netanyahu under the bus, right? And I think that just shows that he doesn't have an ideology. He doesn't care about it's not about APAC money. It's not about he's a Zionist. It's not about any of that. He doesn't think like that. He doesn't think like that. I think people overcomplicate what Trump is. He's just like whatever makes him popular, whatever helps his political career, right? Agree. Yeah, he does what? Yes. He will turn on a dime. Exactly. He will turn on a dime. And so sometimes people, and by the way, this could be the same with Russia. He could become Russia's best friend tomorrow and then become Russia's enemy the next day. He just doesn't care. So, and I think Trump sees the writing on the wall. And I think the writing on the wall that he sees is the midterms are coming up. He sees a lot of people, especially younger people in his party. A lot of the younger, shortest attention span too. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. He does have short attention span. I think Trump is seeing that. I think Trump is seeing that the Iran thing was a disaster. I think I don't think Trump likes the fact that a lot of people kept saying that Bibi Netanyahu was controlling him. I don't think he liked that. I think he deliberately leaked. A couple of weeks ago where there was a leak of Trump yelling at Bibi and telling him to F off, right? And I think that was leaked. I think he wanted people to see that. He wanted people to see that he was standing up to Bibi, right? He wanted to see that. He didn't try to hide it. So now remember, if Trump is caught saying something that he doesn't like, he will say it's fake news. Oh, it didn't happen. It didn't happen. It's fake news. But with the leak about yelling at Bibi, he didn't. Not only did he say it was not fake news, he said yes, it happened. Right? Yeah. So again, so I think Trump loves the narrative at the moment that he's standing up to Bibi because for so long, so many people said he's behind. Now, I actually don't think he was doing the stuff because Bibi told him. I think he was doing the stuff because he wanted to do that stuff himself, right? But I think now that the narrative, now that hi Marty, good to see you. Now that the narrative has gone against the war in Iran, I think Trump is doing what he always does. He does a 180, right? And now suddenly he's best friends with JD Vance again. I don't know if you've noticed this. He kind of goes between Marco Rubio and JD Vance, right? And at the during the when he went after Venezuela and he got Maduro, what happened is hi Marty, good to see you. What he did was that he actually started putting Marco Rubio on TV to explain what was happening in Venezuela. When Trump first started going after Iran, the same thing. He brought Pete Hegseth and he brought Marco. Hi Tamara, good to see you. He brought Pete Hegseth and he brought Marco Rubio out. So they're more his war hawks. They're the people who want, they're like the war hawks. Pete Hegseth, Marco Rubio, right? Now, remember, Marco Rubio is the secretary. Sorry, Marco Rubio is the Secretary of State. What's happening at the moment is something that Marco Rubio should be talking about. Marco Rubio should be on TV talking about what's happening in Iran. He's the Secretary of State. That's kind of his job. Yet, Marco Rubio has disappeared. Like, Marco Rubio has actually disappeared. I haven't seen Marco Rubio in weeks. What I have seen is JD Vance. And JD Vance is everywhere at the moment. He's on The View. He's talking to liberal media. And this is the interesting thing about JD Vance. JD Vance is doing something that he never did. He hasn't done a lot. He's going on non-MAGA media, right? He's going into non-MAGA media. So he's going on NBC. He's going on ABC. He's going on The View. Remember? Remember The View and all that. And I think there's two things happening tomorrow. Yeah, I think there's two things happening. One, Trump has now pivoted back to JD Vance because I don't think JD Vance wanted to go into Iran, and has now pivoted away from the hawks, which is Marco Rubio and which is Pete Hegseth. I think he's going back to trying to come to think of it. I have seen little Marco either. Yeah, he hasn't been around. Now remember, Marnie, he's the Secretary of State. It's very unusual when we're having these discussions about war that the Secretary of State wouldn't be involved. It's highly unusual not to see Marco Rubio in the state. Remember, in Venezuela, and when they first started bombing Iran, he was everywhere. He was everywhere. So he's been sidelined, and now JD Vance is the new favorite. So it's like he's got two sons. It's like JD Vance is one of his sons, and Marco Rubio is the other one. And for a long time, Marco Rubio was the favorite son. But recently, since the war in Iran went badly, JD Vance has become the favorite son again. And I think also, and so I think that I think that's why JD Vance. I wonder if you go to their wedding. I wonder if you, yeah, I think yeah, exactly. Look, JD Vance has a big problem. He has a Kamala Harris problem, right? And what I mean by JD Vance has a Kamala Harris problem is he's the vice president. Kamala Harris was the vice president to Joe Biden. One of the biggest problems that she had going into when she became the candidate, right, is that she kept getting asked, what would you do different to Joe Biden? And she refused to answer that question. And because Joe Biden was so unpopular at 2024, that everyone was saying, "Hi, Kimmy, thanks for joining." Everyone was saying, right, so you wouldn't do anything differently to Joe Biden? And she said no. That was a massive problem for Kamala Harris. You've been the vice president of someone who became unpopular, right? And you're saying you're going to do the same thing. That's not a good strategy. Now, you don't have to throw your president under the bus, but you have to show you're going to do something different. Because you know why? Why would they vote for you? Yes, in Gaza, yeah. They'd say, why would they vote for you when they could just have Joe Biden? Do you know what I mean? Like, you've got to give something different. This is the problem with JD Vance. JD Vance has the Kamala Harris problem. He's the vice president. And every time Trump says something, he's the first person to come out and defend him. Epstein files, wars in Iran, wars in Venezuela, all this sort of stuff, right? Even though I'm pretty sure he doesn't agree with some of that stuff. But he came out and he defended it. And I think he's going to have the same problem Kamala Harris has. That, but as the vice president, is the vice president of someone who is now deeply unpopular, Trump, right? And he's going to be seen as, he's going to be tarred with the same feathers as Trump was. So I think he's in a big bad position at the moment, right? And I think that's why. Hi, Nicole, thanks for joining. And I think that's one of the reasons why I think JD Vance is going to really struggle. Now, I will say JD Vance has just written a book. And apparently in one of the excerpts, Nicole, in one of the parts of the JD Vance's books that he wrote, in the book, he talked about, do you remember when JD Vance said that um, Kamala Harris was like a childless cat lady. I can't remember the exact words. Does anyone remember the words? He said something like Kamala Harris is a childless cat lady, even though she's got stepchildren, right? Tr- uh, JD Vance has said that he regrets saying those things, right? So in his book, he walks away for some of the things that he said during the election. This is what I think JD Vance, people who support her. That's right. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. This is what I think. This is what I think is happening. I think JD Vance isn't just going on the View and other media to defend Trump. I think that's part of it. I think he's going on there to redesign himself, uh, re redesign himself as a different candidate to Donald Trump. Hi, Jim. Thanks for joining. And I think what you're going to see is a softer JD Vance, right? A JD Vance, he's trying to reinvent himself. That's right. And he's trying to reinvent himself as not like Trump, someone who doesn't just say horrible things all the time, someone who's a more soft kinded person, but is also more anti war and more that. So I think JD Vance sees that a lot of people on that side of politics or in the middle, right? And I'm talking about more like independents, look at Trump and a lot of them will say, I don't like a lot of the stuff that he says. You know, I don't like a lot. And more people say that when the economy, so some people like independents, they voted for him, but they still didn't like him as a person. So they would say, they would say something like, I don't really like I'm not really a big fan of Donald Trump. I don't like some of the things that he says. He says bad things sometimes, right? That's what they'll say. They'll say, oh, he says bad things. But I think he could be better for the economy, right? Now, the problem is that because the economy is not doing well now and he was elected, a lot of those people are now like, he's bad for the economy, but he's also a bit of an a-hole, right? So I think JD Vance is trying to create a new lane for himself, which is some of the old MAGA views, like some of the old MAGA stuff, but without the meanness, without the name calling, without the meanness and stuff like that. So I think that's why he's doing it, because someone like JD Vance would never have gone on the View before. Why would you go on the View, right? Why would you go on the View? In a sense, JD Vance is doing what Kamala Harris probably should have done. JD Vance is going into areas where they're not friendly for him, right? However, that's actually not necessarily a dumb thing, because what Kamala Harris did is she went to places where people already liked her. Yeah, where people already liked her. So Kamala Harris was always on NBC, stuff like that, but she didn't want to go to areas where she was disliked, right? Uh, she was disliked. So what he's doing is he's doing the reverse, right? He's doing the reverse. Where Democrats need to go to places, right? Where Democrats need to go to places where they're not liked to talk to audiences that might not necessarily vote for them. JD Vance realizes that you can also be in a right wing echo chamber, right? You can also they're not just left wing echo chambers. There's also right wing echo chambers, and in those right wing echo chambers where JD Vance exists, um, you're not going to, those people are already going to vote for you. But to win elections in America, a lot of those people have moved away from Trump. And a lot of those people who moved away were particularly white women, like white women have moved away from that. Trump used to get a lot of white women, right? That was a big part of his thing. However, in recent polling, a lot of white women have now moved away from Trump. And I think JD Vance is trying to get those people back by going on shows like The View. So he's trying to go into areas where it's not friendly for you, right? Similar to what like Pete Buttigieg does. Pete Buttigieg goes on Fox News. Pete Buttigieg goes into, you know what I mean? So it's not necessarily a bad tactic. I just don't think it's going to work because JD Vance just doesn't come across as genuine. JD Vance doesn't come across as authentic, and JD Vance just doesn't come across as as and he comes across as someone who's been too friendly towards Donald Trump. Like he's been too single. Everything Donald Trump said, he's agreed with, right? And again, that's going to be a problem for him at the election because everyone's just going to go, "You're just Trump, right? You're just Trump." So I actually don't think it's going to work. Yeah, yeah. Eric, yeah. So exactly. So I just don't think it's going to work. What else was going to say? Yeah, and also like I think a lot of people have um, had enough of some parts of MAGA. Like you had the 250th birthday party for the United States. Happy birthday, everyone! Happy birthday, everyone! Happy birthday to all my American friends out there. I'm sure you had a great birthday party. You know, now, however, I will say that in America under Donald Trump, it was celebrated, right? It was celebrated by having a big UFC fight on the front lawn, which was kind of hilarious in a way. It was bad. It was and they had like a big UFC fight. And one of the things I always notice with a lot of MAGA people is a lot of MAGA people will say, you know what, the problem with, and Trump says this all the time, the problem with immigration, is we're getting, this is what MAGA and Trump says, the problem with immigration is we're getting too many people from poor countries and they come to America and they change the culture for the worse. So they're worried about bringing in people from overseas into America, immigrants, and they're going to change the culture for the worse. So this is Trump and MAGA. So then you juxtapose that with the UFC fighting on the front lawn of the White House, invited by Trump. They're there because of Trump. And then one of the people who gets up, right, to one of the UFC fighters who just won, and Joe Rogan's there with his microphone because he's like hosting it, and he passes the microphone over to the UFC guy who just won. Remember, they're there at the Trump lawn. These are all the MAGA people. A lot of these people endorse Mark, and he says Michelle Obama is a man. Does everyone agree with me? Right. So again, you have a group of people who don't want too many immigrants to come into the country because they're worried the culture will get worse. But this is their culture. Their culture is people fighting each other, hitting each other on the head 100 times, right? They can barely string a sentence together. Most of these people probably wouldn't know basic math or English, right? And they go on TV and say things like the ex-president's wife is a man. I'm not sure that America should be trying to protect that type of culture, right? I'm not sure that I mean, if you're worried, now maybe MAGA and Trump are worried that the culture coming from overseas is too good for the culture in America. Maybe they're worried that people coming from overseas might be too well educated, that people coming from overseas, have a university degree, or people coming overseas have a trade, or people from overseas don't go around trying to say women are men. And so I think there's a thing. I don't think America, or especially MAGA America, should worry about immigrants destroying American culture. That's when you've got that type of culture under MAGA. I wouldn't worry about that. It can only get better. It can definitely only get better. That's not great. I wouldn't be trying to protect that culture. Yeah, you're going to start exactly. Yeah, and a lot of these people, they're peanut brains. Some of them are even worn up brains. A lot of Trump supporters are peanut brains. Some of them are worn up brains. But the thing is that I don't even blame the worn-up brains, the peanut brains who supported Trump. I blame um, I blame the Trump administration. I blame the fact that I think a lot of people got sucked in. I think a lot of people. Thank you, Levy. A lot of people got sucked into this world because they got lied to by Trump. Trump lied to a lot of people. He told them that he'd fix the economy and all this stuff. But I certainly, in my opinion, I would not be worried. I've got to say this as well, as someone who lives in Australia, as an Aussie, as um, an Aussie from Brisbane, Australia. So that's my American. It's getting better. It's becoming more California. I think it's becoming more Californian. My accent, my American accent. As an Aussie from Australia, I have to say that in Australia, yeah. Uh, so in Australia, we have a far right wing party called One Nation, which is similar to the Trump party, and cannot bring themselves to admit that they were fooled. Exactly, Levy. Exactly. In the UK, you have Nigel Farage, who's also a far right wing party. So the thing to remember is there's a lot of far right wing Trump like parties coming up around the world. And the interesting thing is they all say the same things. They all hate immigrants, or not all. They hate a lot of immigrants. Aussie accents are the prettiest, in my opinion. Thank you, Kimmy. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much, Kimmy. I really thank you so much. Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. No, I'll stop. I'll stop now. I'll stop doing that. But yeah. As an Aussie, I will say, as an Aussie, that there are a lot of far right wing parties coming around the world, and those far right wing parties all have one thing in common. They always go on about immigration. That was Southern. Aussies and Irish accents. You'll see on the South Lawn motorcycle tricks, ignorant brain damage, Neanderthals spreading out ignorant. Exactly. Exactly, Jim. Good day, mate. Hi, Bluesen. Good day, mate. Yep. Hi. Hi, Bluesen. We in Canada, I have ridiculous right wing nut job party too. Yeah, exactly. Exactly, Twyla. There are right wing Trump like parties all around the world. And the thing that they all have in common is that they're fixated on immigration. They think that if you reduce immigration, their lives will become better. That suddenly everything in their lives will become better, right? They'll be able to date better looking people, right? They'll be able to have better relationships. They'll suddenly have huge amounts of money, right? Suddenly, people will start getting more friends. It's like they think let's just reduce immigration and my life will just be perfect. There'll be rainbows and flowers and everything. That's what they believe. The interesting thing is that like the MAGA party, a lot of these far right wing groups around the world who are fixated on immigration is they all say the same thing. Like MAGA, they will say, "Oh, you know what? It's not just immigrants. You got to have the right type of immigrants. You have to have the right type of immigrant." And what they mean by that is white people, right? White educated people. That's the people they want. And they don't want people coming from third world countries who look different to them. That's basic. They won't say that these days, but that's basically what they mean. Well, actually some will. Um, so that's what they mean. Now I will say this. I will say this that a lot of the white people that they're talking about, the educated people they're talking about from other countries, they don't support them. They don't support far right wing parties. That's the irony of these groups is that the people that they want to come into their country, they're not like them. If you're a white person who's well educated and has a good job, you're way more likely to be a centre left person than you are to be a far right wing person. So the people they want into the country don't even like them. If you look at the demographics of MAGA, Australian far right wing groups, far right wing, they're all generally this. They're generally white people with no college degrees, not a lot of education, and they haven't done very well economically. The opposite to what the opposite to what they want to come into the country. The fact of the matter is that they represent. This is the irony, right? This to me, I find it a little bit hilarious. This is the irony of these groups. What they want is not who they are. The people who are like them are the people they don't want, right? The people who are like, yeah. So they're not like that. Like if you want most white educated people around the world, a centre left people. They vote for Democrats in America. They vote for centre left in Australia, centre left in England. So I'm not sure if they want to attract people like themselves, they would be attracting people with no education, people who have violent backgrounds, people who you think culture is UFC fighting, people who think trolling people on the internet like a 15-year-old is culture. Um, so this is the type of culture they want to deport. Yet you'll often hear them talking on TV, and they'll say, "You know what? Western culture. Western culture is all about where science, education. That's what Western culture is about." No, no. Okay, you might be right, but that's not your type of Western culture. Your Western culture is anti-vax. Your Western culture is anti-education. Your Western culture is anti-culture. You know what I mean? It's so ironic. The funniest thing I ever seen is I remember watching this video. It was only like a couple of months ago, and it was in the UK. And it was I think they were in London in the UK, and they were protesting too many immigrants. There was these white dudes, too many immigrants. There's too many people coming from India. They'll talk about India and Pakistan, right? And they were, "Oh, it's just too many immigrants. Right? We need to go back to what it was like 50 years ago." That's what they were saying. And then the reporter said, "What are you guys doing afterwards?" And they said, "We're going to go eat something." And they said, "Oh, what are you going to eat?" They said, "Oh, we're going to get some curry. They're going to get some curry." So they spent all day protesting Indian people, and then at night they're going to go to an Indian restaurant to have a curry. Peanut brains, walnut brains. Okay, I mean seriously, like you have to Indian food exactly. Like what's going on here? What is what? There's there's nothing in there, right? Nothing. It's just what pea brains. Yeah, pea brains. Yeah. My dog has a bigger brain. My dog is half Chihuahua, half Maltese. She has a bigger brain than these people. Like, how is it? How is it that you can spend the whole day protesting about Indians and then go and eat a beautiful, beautiful, luscious, beautiful Indian food? I love Indian food. It's one of my favorite. I love Indian food. But I wouldn't go protesting Indian food all day and then sit in an Indian restaurant and then be surrounded by people like a person who made your food who was Indian. Um, yeah, kind of exactly. And then sit there all day and go, "Oh, yeah." It's like they want the benefits of immigration. They want the benefit. Far right wing people want the benefits of immigration, which is interesting food, interesting culture, right? Interesting people, right? Without without them actually existing in the country. Yeah. So, again, like, it's a very interesting thing that there's and I see this in Australia as well with far right wing groups in Australia. Like, generally speaking, they love to go and eat Chinese food or Indian food or, what Italian food. They love it. They love that stuff. But they don't want the people, but at the same time, they want to get those people out of the country. Right? I mean, what do you want? Do you want a country that only makes, I don't know, Vegemite sandwiches? I mean, Vegemite is nice. I don't know if you've had Vegemite before. It's a good. I like Vegemite, but I wouldn't want to eat Vegemite every day. White bread? Are you allowed to eat brown bread? Can you only eat white bread as one of these far right? I don't know. Yeah, I've seen a lot of MAGAs in Mexican restaurants. Yeah, they love Mexican restaurants. They love it. They love that stuff. They just don't want the people there. They want they want they want they want some hillbilly making the Mexican food. They want some hillbilly making the Indian food. That's what they want. They just want that, you know. So again, we're not dealing with the smartest people on the planet. But as I said before, that's the hilarious part of the far right wing groups, and not just in America, in Australia, in the UK, in Europe, is they constantly go on about Western culture being the number one culture, and how they got Western culture. We are the culture of science, medicine, movies, film, art. We're the people of freedom, of democracy. We are the people of this. Yet those people don't represent any of those things. They have the educational levels of a koala, and I mean that koalas don't have access in this country to. And I'm not saying as insult to koalas, because under the government laws in Australia, koalas don't have access to free education in this country. And it's something that I've always been against. It's something that myself, I've always been against, not allowing koalas to have free education in this country. So when I say that, it's not their fault. I'm not blaming koalas at all. On top of that, these far right-wing people, not only do they have no education, they have no culture. They think people punching each other at the UFC, right, in the White House is culture. They think that's culture. They think a guy grabbing a microphone from a peanut brain called Joe Rogan, who has way too big of an audience for someone like that, and saying Michelle Obama is a man, that's culture. That's the culture that you want. Yes, but what percent of Aussies do you think are really right-wing? Nothing. Well, yeah, such a lover. Well, Marty, I will say, it's gone up a lot in Australia in the last 6 months. It's gone up a lot in Australia in the last 6 months. Up until 6 months ago, there was so for the last 30 years in Australia, there's been a far right wing group called One Nation. That's in it. And it's run by a woman called Pauline Hanson. So before we all say let's get a woman into politics, this particular person is the worst person in Australian politics. So and by the way, this is the thing that I can't stand about it. She always says, why does the left always say they want a female politician, but here I am and they hate me, right? This is why identity politics is not always a great idea. But anyway, she's a far right-wing person. She was around in the 90s, and all she used to talk about is Asian. She used to say Asian invasion all the time. Asian invasion, too many Asians coming and stuff like that. She's very far right. She's a big supporter of Trump, by the way. She loves Trump. In fact, she went to Mar-a-Lago last year and partied with Trump and his friends over there. So you understand she's also friends with Nigel Farage. So they're all so MAGA, One Nation, and Nigel Farage, they actually all know each other. And here's an interesting thing: a lot of the people. So what happened is when Pauline Hanson went to Mar-a-Lago last year to talk with Trump, not just Trump but his advisors, they offered to help her in Australia with social media. So some of the advisors of Trump are now helping her, and they're doing the same with Nigel Farage in the UK. So there's now a connection between the far right-wing parties all around the world, and they're using similar advisors to help each other with social media and push far right-wing things, right? So anyway, she only had about 8 to 10% of support in Australia, which is pretty light, right? But in the last 6 months, that's gone up to 30%. In 6 months, she's gone from a minority party, like 10%, to now having the highest vote. But remember, in Australia at the moment, we have a centre-left government, Labor government, so she can't get into power. And it's much harder in Australia because we have preferential voting, which is ranked choice voting. So it's much harder in Australia for a right-wing party to grab hold of power because, for example, if you vote for the Greens, who also get about 10%, they will give their preferences to the centre-left government. So it's not just about who's the primary vote of each party. You've got to take in who they're giving their preferences to. It's a bit confusing, but yeah. Also in Australia, we have compulsory voting, which means everyone comes out to vote, and that generally works against extremist groups. So for those reasons, it will be harder. But she does have a lot of support in Australia. She went from 10% to 30%. Now, there's two things, a couple of reasons that happened. One is she went to Mar-a-Lago and she got support by a Trump administration. And two, we had a big terrorist attack in Australia, a mass shooting in December last year in Bondi, which you probably know about, where two radical Muslim people, Islamists, killed about 20 or 30 Jewish people. They attacked Jewish people, right? And she's always been known as the anti-Muslim person. So she would go into parliament wearing a burqa to protest the burqa. So because of that and a couple of other things, she suddenly went up in the polls. So don't think that this. I think the right wing growth is much more intentional. People like Steve Bannon, Cambridge Analytics, are aimed at Firehouse disinformation. Yeah, and look, I will say this: the rise of the far right is not just in America; it's happening all around the world. But I will say this: I think the thing that's underpinning this is the economy. There are a lot of people who don't feel the economy's done that well for themselves, right? They feel like they've been left behind. And so the rise of the far right can't happen on its own. If the economy was doing well in Australia, if the economy was doing well in America, Europe, Scandinavia, everywhere, you wouldn't have the rise of the far right. It can only happen when things are not going well. And I think what you're finding is there's a lot of people, especially a lot of these people seem to be Gen X, which is I'm Gen X, my generation. So people in their 40s and 50s who didn't do as well economically. For example, they weren't able to buy a home, right? They're still renting. They didn't get a great job, all that sort of stuff. So there's a lot of similarities between the demographics of people who vote for MAGA, One Nation in Australia, and Nigel Farage. And they're generally people who are a little bit older who didn't do well economically, and they feel like both. I think it's and they feel like both centre left and centre right governments have not helped them. Right, so some of these people have voted centre right, centre left, and then their lives stayed the same. So now they're looking for something different. They're being left behind. The elites own everything and are screwing the rest of us whenever possible. Gen X rocks. Yes, Gen X rocks. Exactly. Unfortunately, the social media platforms have really exploited this and spread falsehoods. Exactly, Gilda. And look, it does. Social media does do a big thing. I mean, I don't know. Australia is much safer than the US. There are a lot of people in the US that worship the guns. Exactly. Yeah, we do. We are much safer. We don't have as many guns. I haven't said this to anyone who follows me on Substack, but recently I've been doing TikTok live videos. So I've been on TikTok live, similar to this, but it's on TikTok, and I haven't been doing too bad. And so, but what I do is I actually debate MAGA people. So look, Nibbles, Nibbles, you say Nibbles, look, hello Nibbles, hello Nibbles, Nibbles. Oh, okay. I'll just move over here so you can see her as well. Thanks, Zelda, for joining. There's Nibbles just behind me. Hi, Nibbles. I'll just look at those ears. Look at those ears. Those ears are quite beautiful, aren't they? She's going back to sleep now. She's cuddling up there, and she's gone now. I see Nibbles. Yeah, I know. Yeah, hi, Nibbles. So yeah, I know. And she doesn't usually. Nibbles doesn't usually get up. She just lays down the whole time. That was quite a moment there. That was a beautiful moment. Thank you, Nicole. Yeah, thank you. And I'm assuming you're talking to Nibbles, not me. But anyway, yeah, she does seem to get a lot of love. Nibbles. Thanks, Zelda. Yeah, like a stuffed animal. Yeah, but she's alive. She's actually alive. Yeah. What was I saying? Looks almost like an Ewok from Star Wars. She's she's a little bit sensitive about her ears. Blues and rock. Yeah, she's a little bit sensitive about her ears, but Nibbles is so darn cute. Yeah, she's amazing. Look at all the love hearts for Nibbles. all the love hearts for Nibbles. I never get those love hearts for me, just for Nibbles. Just for Nibbles, not for me, just for Nibbles. It makes me so mad. It makes me so angry that I have to compete with a little dog, little Chihuahua dog. Really does make me angry. Um, so yeah, so what was I saying? Um, yeah, I'm still so angry about the whole Nibbles thing. What was I saying? Do you think she'd date an Ewok? Well, Tamara, I don't think so, because the thing about it is that she's very sensitive about her ears. And so if she dated an Ewok, um, she would, yeah. So she doesn't, and because she's sensitive about her ears, she doesn't like other dogs to have other animals to have big ears as well. Yeah. Are you following the World Cup? The US plays Australia. Oh yes, I am following the World Cup. I'm a massive, massive World Cup supporter. I've been watching all the games on the World Cup soccer. I know a lot of people in America don't follow soccer. I'm actually not a big soccer supporter myself, except for the World Cup. But Australia will be playing America tomorrow, and we're going to beat you. We are going to beat you. We're going to kill you. No, I don't. That doesn't. But I will say this: Australia did very well in the first game. We beat Turkey 2-0, which no one expected us to win. And by the way, this is interesting. One of the top players in the Australian side, right? So at the moment, because we have Pauline Hanson, the far right wing person, right? And Australia did so well in their first game against Turkey, because Turkey's a good side, right? Yeah, yeah. Turkey's a very good side on soccer, right? So, but our best player is a black guy who grew up in a refugee camp, I think in Tanzania. I don't know exactly. I can't remember. I don't really know him that well because I don't follow soccer. But he grew up in a refugee camp in Africa, right? And he was our top player, and so he's been everywhere, right? And so Pauline Hanson, who usually is like, "Go Australia," she's very patriotic. Go Australia, Australia, this and that. She's been very quiet about Australia winning against Turkey, even though it was like a big thing. And I think the reason is because the star of it was a black refugee. So that's not too good for her, which I find hilarious that she's like being very quiet about it because the star is a black, like this is like, yeah. Trump's authoritarian welcome map comes in one color when it comes to immigration. Yes. And Jim, by the way, um, you probably, um, you probably know this as well, Jim, but under Trump, they've changed the refugee program, which is different to the immigration policy. And it's now 99% only white South Africans are allowed into America. That's the refugee program. 99% white South Africans. Because nobody in the world has been more hard done by than white South Africans. No one in the world has had it worse than white South Africans. Even though, even though white South Africans in South Africa are some of the most affluent people in South Africa, right? It's incredible. So the Trump administration looked all around the world, all of Africa, the whole of Africa, the Horn of Africa, everywhere, some of the poorest countries. They looked at countries in South America, right? They looked at countries in Asia. They looked at some of the poorest countries around the world with a microscope, and they could only see white South Africans struggling, even though economically they are they are demographically the people doing the best in all of Africa. I don't know. They don't even want the World Cup players coming to. I don't get that wrong. Yeah. Or do they? Yeah, there's been some stuff with visas. For example, one of the umpires was from Somalia or something, and they didn't let him into the country. Yeah, exactly. You're right. They are playing musky. Exactly. It's all Peter Thiel, Musk, Tamara. I read there are some problems. Yes, thanks to the Elon Musk microscope. Yeah, Peter Thiel, Elon Musk. Exactly. Peter Thiel, Elon Musk. They're very focused. You can take the apartheid out of them, but you can never take them out of the apartheid. I don't know if I got that right, but they see the world through South African apartheid. Because what happened is, as everyone would know, in their minds, they think when apartheid finished, South Africa went worse. And so that's why they're always fixated with this white thing in America. They think once there's less white people than black people, they think America is going to turn into South Africa. That's how they see the whole world through the prism of what happened in South Africa when they were growing up, when apartheid was gone and they brought in Nelson Mandela. That's the only way they see the world. They're fixated with that, right? And so, yeah, they think any country that is not prominent, that is not more white than no, sounds like American South. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And look, the funniest thing about Elon Musk is he'll often say, "I'm not right wing. I'm what the left used to be like under Bill Clinton," which is actually not true, right? Because under Bill Clinton, they didn't only allow white South Africans in. Under Bill Clinton, they didn't talk about immigrants the way he does. Under Clinton, right? They didn't go after poor people, right? Under Clinton, Clinton actually expanded aid to third world countries. Trump, he wants to get rid of aid to third world countries. So they're not alike at all, right? But of course, he sees the world through woke and anti-woke. He sees the world through white and non-white. That's how he sees the world. It's amazing that the person who would criticize the left for being too focused on identity politics, Elon Musk, right? He would say the left is too focused on identity politics. Yet all he talks about is identity politics. All he talks about is white people. All he talks about is white culture. He's obsessed with identity politics. Through ketamine's eyes, exactly. Nobody talks about white people more than Elon Musk. He's constantly posting about white people online. It's like you could be talking to Elon about his car. You could say, "Elon, your car, it's a really nice car," and he just like, "Yeah, it's the white people." Okay, yeah. Just I wanted to ask you about what's the speed of your car? What does it do? What's the speed? What's the max? See, it's about white culture and about okay, yeah, I get that. The steering, can we talk about the steering? No. He's obsessed. Everything is white people. Everything is what like you could be talking about anything with him and he'll somehow bring it to white people. Right? He's obsessed with it. It's like that's all he sees the world through. Color. He just sees the world through color. Now, if you're a black person who talks about seeing the world as a black person, then he's like, whoa, whoa, like, why do you talk about your race all the time? Why are you constantly talking about being black? We should be colorblind. We shouldn't have to see whether you're black or white. So he had, and as soon as it goes, and so he has this complete opposite views when black people talk about their experiences, he's like, oh, well, no, you know, I think you're being racist against white people, you know, and he only ever sees racism. Like, for example, as soon as Musk took over Twitter, I deleted my account. Yeah, look, I'm still on there. You don't have to, yeah. uh, Um, but yeah, like and some people say I've heard some people on the right defend him by saying that he's on the spectrum. Well, I know a lot of people on the spectrum and they don't talk like that. You can't blame being on the spectrum for what he's saying. That's just ridiculous. Thank you, Gilda. That's all right. Yeah, and so this idea, like and I'll just say this as a side. One of my favorite TV shows is Love on the Spectrum. Love on the Spectrum is one of my favorite. And I don't know if you've seen it before. It's a documentary where people on the spectrum that go dating. So it's they go dating with each other. And I just want to say this as an Australian, we actually invented that show. That show was first made in Australia about 10 years ago. About 10 years ago, that show was first made in Australia. And then other countries like the UK and America started making it. But a lot of people don't know. I'll see. So if you ever watch it, you'll hear the producer. You'll hear a person's voice talking to the people, and he's got an Aussie accent. Right? He's got the guy talking to the people. He's got an Aussie accent. That's because we invented it. we invented that. I haven't, but a content creator I follow talks about, yeah, it's fantastic. You should watch it, Neurodivergent. You definitely should watch it. And I'm not saying that just because of your name. I'm just saying it's an amazing show. It is the best show I think I've ever seen. I'm autistic now. Now what on YouTube? Yeah. Now what on YouTube? Yeah. But yeah, it's a great show because it just shows how honest people are with each other on that show. But people are not like Elon Musk, right? They're not like Elon Musk. Like, you don't suddenly become, you're not autistic and suddenly become a white supremacist. Like, I haven't seen I don't know I know a lot of people on the spectrum and not one of them is like Elon Musk. Now, there might be some because like anything else, there's a spectrum, right? Even people on the spectrum have a spectrum of political views. So, you know, but the idea that somehow you give him a free kick because of that is ridiculous. And it's insulting to people on the spectrum. Is that a show on YouTube? Well, it's not really. I don't know if you might be able to see clips of it on YouTube, right? You might be able to see clips on YouTube, but I don't know the company. You'll be able to watch it through a streaming service. So, Kimmy, just Google search Love on the Spectrum and where you can watch it, and you should be able to see it. In Australia, we watch it on an Australian platform, but every country has its own. And by the way, there's an Australian version, there's an American version, and there's a UK version. They're all the versions are very good. I'm autistic now. What is a content creator who wasn't diagnosed until college age? She grew up in Australia. Oh wow, wow, that's amazing. Where did you grow up? Where in Australia are you actually? So wait, Neuro. Are you actually American but came to Australia, or are you actually Australian and then the UK? Yeah, and whereabouts in Australia were you from? Yeah, I expect answers to all those questions. Yeah, YouTube TV I think carries it. Oh, okay. I didn't know that. Interesting. Yeah, you got to watch it. Love on the Spectrum. Honestly, it's the best show you'll ever see. And it's really heartwarming show. It's funny. It's heartwarming. It really does. If you haven't seen it, honestly, go watch. Don't watch couple. I did not. The content. I did not. The content creator. I gotcha. Sorry. That was my fault. Yeah. Yeah. I'm American. I grew up in America. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, the content. Yeah, exactly. So he's got he's got an Aussie accent. But I think it was the first show that was ever made. Um, the first show that was ever made was in Australia, and also in Australia. I'm autistic now. What is the name of her YouTube channel? I don't know. Yeah, Heiner. But yeah. So again, you know, the idea, the idea that Donald Trump, right? The idea that Donald Trump or Elon Musk somehow have a good idea of where to get immigrants from, and not, I think is really bad. Yeah, I think it's really bad. So again, I think there's a cultural problem at the moment. I think besides an economic problem, I think it says your internet connection is unstable. It's I just got a thing saying your interconnection. I've seen the ones Joe's talking about. Oh, okay, yeah. Your internet connection's unstable. It's saying that my internet connection is unstable. Okay. Is anyone having problems hearing me, am I? Yeah, or maybe not. Maybe it's just a temporary thing. I don't think my internet connection is unstable. I think it's perfectly fine. But Um, yeah, fine here. Okay, thanks, Levy. Yeah, it might have just been a fine here. Thanks, Hilda. It might have just been saying that my internet connection was emotionally, emotionally unstable. Do you know what I mean? So not technically, but it was making some sort of judgment on my internet connection. I hope not. I'd like to think Substack wouldn't do something like that. Yeah, that happens. Are you kind of far from your router? No, I actually got really fast internet connection, so I don't know why that happens. It's weird. It does happen from time to time. Some state has issues sometimes. It does. Pretty sure it's black population. Exactly. Pretty sure the black population of South Africa didn't vote for apartheid. If USA, yeah, USA was killed off because of those exact. Yeah, yeah, exactly. And look, the thing about people being obsessed with immigrants is that it's always been a very strange thing for me. Do you know what I mean? Like people, I think a lot of people as they get older, not everyone, but some people when they get older, they they become very nostalgic, right? And they become nostalgic to when they were younger, and they start to romanticize. The speed isn't usually a problem; it's the bandwidth. Oh, okay. I think my bandwidth is fine. I think so. I'll check it out. I'll check it out. I'll speak to Nibbles. Nibbles is in charge of IT. Link to I'm autistic now. What? She's a gem. I recommend her. Okay. Well, I'll definitely check that out. Let me just copy that. I'm going to copy that. There you go. Perfect. I just copied that. And then afterwards, I'll go on YouTube and I'll check it out. Yeah. Um, yeah. She's pretty much looks after IT sort of stuff. I have no idea about IT, but she's pretty much, she gets onto it. Um, but yeah, I think the obsession with a lot of I think AI is trolling your computer. Okay. I think you might be right. I think you might be right. In fact, I don't even know if any of you are real. Like, what if none of the people on here are actually real? What if Kimmy is AI? What if Tamara is AI? What if Blues and Bob is AI? What if I have never ever spoken like to someone on here who's actually real? And all this time because after the Substack, I would then, Dave from California, yeah, I don't know. I mean, how do I know? I don't know for sure. I mean, I'm assuming Tamara. See, Tamara's telling me to stop, which is exactly what's an AI would tell me to do. Tamara has now made me think it's even more likely. How do you know if we are real? Exactly. I'm real born. Yeah, saying you're born in 1953 doesn't make you real because AI could easily say the same thing. So, so far I've seen no evidence that anyone is real. Are we possibly? I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm not even real. Would AI say fuck Trump? Possibly. Well, if you want to talk to me, you can. Living in America, sometimes I wish I wasn't real. Well, neurodivergent, if you ever want to come on my show, let me know and I'll invite you on one day. Let me know. We can chat. Um, Levy. So yeah. What was I saying? I was saying something else. Before I went down this tangent of who are we? Are we real? Um, I think most of you actually are real. I think most of you are real. I can, yeah. Um, I'm a little bit on Kimmy. On a Kimmy, I'm a little bit suspicious about Kimmy, and the reason I'm a little bit suspicious about Kimmy is because a lot of her compliments seem to go towards my dog. Sh- Um, yeah. So I don't know. It doesn't feel real. You would think I would be getting more compliments than my dog, but so for that reason, I think she's probably AI. That just doesn't add up to me? You know what I mean? It doesn't add up. Why would you give Nibbles more compliments than me? That's very suspicious to me. That makes me think, wait a sec, I'm real and sorry. I don't normally cuss. I was having human imposter syndrome earlier today. Yeah, we all have. We would love to see a Joe and neurodiversion. Absolutely. Zelda seems so. I'm a co-host on Mindhaven. Kimmy is the subscription fairy. Oh, wow. Okay. Well, let's have a conversation someday. I'd love to have a conversation someday. And we can find out if you're real. I saw her live with Nick Paro. She's real. Well, until I see it with my own eyes, I'm not saying one way or the other. Uh, Kimmy is my kindred spirit. Okay, now I'm starting to doubt that you're real. Tamara love. But yeah, um, I'm gonna let's move on. And you're in a doghouse with Australia. You're great, but Nibbles is next level. See, there you go. See, the people saying that about Nibbles, is it? I'm in the US Deep South, moving north soon. Hopefully, is it? I'm in the US Deep South, moving on. Neuro is adorable. Well, um, yeah, not as cute as Nibbles though. I would say, but cute. All right, send me a DM. We can arrange a chat. All right, I will do that. I will do that. Um, So what was I talking about? I forgot what I was talking about. Oh, I was talking about what was I talking about? Um, you guys are AI. Um, Kimmy's probably the most likely to be AI. Um, yeah. What was I talking about? Yeah. So generally speaking, I've just got my thoughts back. Good night, Sandra. Did Sandra say she was going? The Sandra Station's going. Yeah. The show, the documentary. Yeah. I'm nowhere near as cute as anyone's pet. Oh, okay. Well, no, fair enough. Segue to another point. Well, I think white thinking everyone's white. Yeah. So I do think the obsession with people's skin color is one of those things where people, as they get, I've noticed this even in Australia where I live, and people my age. So people my age are generally, most of the people I hang around with are like in their like mid to late 40s. Um, and I notice a lot of people in that age group. Um, they often will say things like, "We were planted here to throw you off your game, Joe." Yeah, it doesn't. It to be honest, Marnie, it doesn't surprise me, and I wouldn't be surprised. Did you see the reflecting pool green? Yes, the reflecting pool is green, and yeah, which is a bit ironic because that's also the color of the Iranian flag. Um, you totally are neuro. Me or yeah, Donna that, yeah. So yeah, so I would say that a lot of people who are getting a bit older, they become a little bit nostalgic for um older times, right? Older times. Um yeah, yeah. So and older times to when they were growing up. And obviously, if you grew up in Australia in the 70s or 80s or even early 90s, it would have been a lot more white. Australia would have been a lot more white back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Green is also the color of Pakistan flag. Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, so the reflective pool is now the same color as the Iranian flag and the Pakistan flag, but definitely not the same color as the American flag. Yeah. Um, so interesting. Interesting. Maybe, maybe Trump's trying to send us a signal. Maybe Trump was sending us a signal. Um, so yeah, so I think a lot of people, as they get older, they become and the thing is that Australia has always had high immigration. High immigration, yeah, exactly, 40 million high immigration. But I'm having fun, Joe. Oh, good. My hometown was a lot more white than it is now. Yeah, and that's good. Many are multi-ethnic, exactly. But in Australia, when I was growing up, most of the people coming from overseas were from Italy or Greece or Portugal, from Europe. Excuse me. I've actually never sneezed on. That's the first time I've ever sneezed on Substack Live. So for you guys to witness that, you should feel quite excited because that's never happened before. And the chances of you being here to see that, considering how many I've done, is quite an interesting thing. So, yeah, yeah. So, thank you, thank you so much. So, look, yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, yeah, thank you very much. I'm glad I shared that with you guys as well because, um, yeah, I'm glad I shared that sneeze with you. I think it's actually made us closer together. Do you know what I mean? Like to share that sort of experience with each other. Um, but yeah, what was I saying? Yes, I think in Australia, a rare sighting. Exactly. Yeah. And Denise is honoured. Thank you so much. Yeah. In China, when I sneezed, I learned that no one says anything when people sneeze. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I don't know why people say things when people sneeze. It seems weird. I don't actually. I would prefer people not even mention it when people sneeze because, like, I don't feel like it's big enough of a thing. Because if you cough, like, unless you if you cough a lot, then a lot of people, someone will go, "Are you sick?" But if you cough once, no one seems to care. So sneezing once, I don't think it should be a big issue. Um, unless I do it on Substack Live, then I think it's something that we should. Do you know what? I'm gonna, like you mentioned that, Joe. Yeah, yeah, yes, yes. I shouldn't have mentioned that. I should have just pretended like it never happened. I think it's probably a Western thing. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think the thing is that if you sneeze in a poor country, you have so many other things to worry about in a poor country that sneezing is the least worry of it. But in a richer country like where we're from, um, we have the privilege of discussing the sneeze. And that, I think it's a white privilege thing, actually. I think it's a white privilege thing to talk about my sneeze because in third world countries, they're talking about food. In first world countries, we're discussing and dissecting, commenting on sneezes. And so I think that shows my white privilege, and I apologize for that. Sneezing and bless you is from the Black Plague. Oh, okay. Yeah, interesting. Interesting. What did Zelda say? Oh, yeah, sneezing. Yeah, the Black Plague. Okay. Well, good news that I'm in Australia, and if I did have the Black Plague, it's not something that I could obviously pass on to you or anything like that. Yeah. Um, so what was I saying before? Yeah, so I think in Australia, so like in Australia, we used to get a lot of European people coming to Australia. So people didn't notice because when you walk down the street and you see people who are from Spain or Portugal or Italy, you don't necessarily see those people as different, right? In grade school, the third world was a place with developing. Ah, yes, developing. Yes, sorry. Donna, Emperor is wearing no clothing tarp. Yes, antibiotics cure the Black Plague. That's true. They did. They didn't have antibiotics back there, unfortunately. But I do believe some people still get the Black Plague. Yeah, like the Spanish flu is still around. We just call it the flu now. But yeah, Libby, do you mean trope? Sneezing was said way back in the day. They would say that your heart stops, hence the God bless. Oh, is that why they say that? Oh, right. Sneezing was said way back. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, yeah. It is. Sneezing um, can be an alarming thing that can happen to anybody. And I think we've all sneezed and been concerned for our own like safety, health, that sort of stuff. Um, but yeah, I mean, you can't fixate on a sneeze. The thing is, you can't. The thing is, some people will sneeze and then they'll just talk about it, and they'll talk about it again and again and again. And I don't think that's a good thing. I think if you sneeze, ignore it, don't talk about it, just move on. You know what I mean? And so yeah, just sneeze and just pretend like it didn't happen. Don't turn it into something big that it's not. You know what I mean? That's my opinion. I've always stood by that. Um, yeah. Um, except for this time. Except for this time. This time I kind of went against what usually my opinion on allergies. Yeah. I do sometimes get allergies actually. That's true. Um, I I am actually, to be honest with you, if I sneeze and the only one in that house, I still say, "Excuse me, it's a lot to do with." Ah, right, yes. Ah, right. So you say it to yourself. Wow. Okay. Yep. Yeah. Yes. That's pretty good. Yeah, I like that. I like that. Well, I will say that I have at times been a hypochondriac. I am one of those people who can sometimes, like, if something happens, I will think the worst thing. Um, yeah, I will think the worst thing. Like sometimes I'll think the worst thing, and I've always been like that. I think I've been like a hypochondriac. Like, I don't think I'm the worst hypochondriac in the world, but I can be like if I get bloods done, like, I'm pretty healthy too, which is weird. I'm pretty healthy, yet I'm a hypochondriac. Like, I don't have any like serious conditions or anything, and I never have. But if I go get bloods done, with it while I wait for my bloods to get done, I just when the doctor's about to call me, I'm just assuming I'm now about to, like, they're about to give me really bad news. And in my head, I will imagine they will start the conversation with like this. This is how I imagine every single time they ring me to tell me the results of my blood test. This is how, every single time. And I've thought about this for days beforehand. I'm sorry, Mr. Thomas, but I wish I had better news. Um, Unfortunately, some of your results have come back, and that's how I imagine it starts. However, even though every single time for my whole life they always start with, "Yeah, nothing bad. It was all good, no problems." Every single time, I think the next one is going to be the one, right? Um, so that's it. Now, and it doesn't help that I've had some experiences where doctors have gotten things wrong. And I'll give you an example. About 10 years ago, I tore my calf muscles. I was playing I was playing sports, I was playing tennis, and I tore my calf muscle. And I went to a physiotherapist, and I could the only physio it was a weekend, so the only physiotherapist I could get to see was someone that specialized in people who had diseases and people who'd had bad experiences with their brain. So, for example, people who'd had like strokes and then they need rehabilitation. So I couldn't go and see like a normal physiotherapist because it was a Saturday. And I rang and they said, look, we don't usually see people for that because we're more to do with people who've had like a bad thing happen to them and then we're rehabilitated. And she said, but she'll see you. Yeah, she said, "We've seen you." I literally saying that right now. She said, "This woman will see you." And this particular physiotherapist, she dealt with people who had brain cancer, brain tumors, strokes, and stuff like that. And so I showed up, and mine was just playing tennis. So I was completely different to what she usually saw. And what she did, hi, the original Nicole, you're coming at a really weird time. It doesn't matter. Stick around. And anyway, I'm at this physio's. I've torn my calf muscle. Remember, I'm a hypochondriac, right? And she does this thing with my foot, where my calf. She does this thing with my foot, and then suddenly she goes really quiet. And my wife was there as well, and suddenly she goes really quiet. And then I was like, "What's going on?" It was really weird, really weird. Hi, thanks. Okay. And I was like, "What's going on?" And and then she pulled me aside, and she said, "Well, when I pushed your foot back, you pushed back against me, right?" No, yeah, something else. Just checking for something else, and that can sometimes be the sign of a brain tumor, right? So there I am. I've just tore my calf muscle playing tennis 2 hours before. I show up. The only person I can see is a physiotherapist who specializes in like people with brain tumors, not just normal stuff. And she's telling me I might have a brain tumor because she touched my foot. And I'm like, what the? I was thinking, what the hell's going on here? I just came in. I literally came in to talk about a tore calf muscle. Now she's telling me I have a brain tumor. And then I walked out of there and I was like, it was the weekend too, so I couldn't go see a doctor. And I was like, I said to my wife, I said, oh my God, I'm going to die. I said, oh my God, I'm going to die. I'm going to. So then what I did is the next day, I managed to get an appointment with a proper physiotherapist who doesn't specialize in brain tumors and stuff like that, right? And I went and saw him and I told him what she said, and he just laughed. He literally just laughed out loud. And he said, I know what she's saying, but you don't have that. And even if you did push back, that doesn't mean you have a brain tumor. So, and I was like, oh, really? But because I am a hypochondriac and because I would always think the worst thing, even though I felt slightly better I still was thinking, but maybe she was right, right? Um, yeah, it was free. It was free. And maybe she was right. So then on the Monday, I went to the doctor and I went to actual proper doctor. And again, they laughed. They laughed. So I had two people just laugh. And I said, and they did the same thing. And they said, she should not have said this to you. Um, this is like, first of all, you don't have that on your foot. But secondly, that would have to be one of 20 symptoms, right? On its own, that is not a brain tumor, right? Also, you have to tell the person to relax their feet. When she touched my foot, because it was the foot where I tore my calf muscle, I remember moving my foot, right? So and she never said, make sure you relax your feet, don't urinate. So so I rang the physiotherapist. Sorry, this is going on too long, but I rang the physiotherapist back, but I spoke to her boss and I told her boss what happened, right? And her boss said she should not have done that. And so I was brought in back to the physio. The woman who did it apologized to me. She did it again and she said it wasn't there anymore. So obviously my brain tumor was cured. And then she said, I don't know if you want to know this, but hypochondriac is no longer a diagnosis. Oh, okay. Yeah. But anyway, so now I'm like, I'm like, so you're telling me I don't? She's like, no, you don't. And I said, why'd you say that? She goes, I have to apologize because the thing you need to understand is I'm not like a normal physiotherapist. I'm someone who all day I deal with people who've had brain tumors, brain cancer, um, strokes. So when you come in, I'm looking for something else, right? I'm looking for something else. I'm not just looking for someone just played tennis because that's not what I'm used to. And I allowed my own biases to overcome because I thought, yeah, exactly. But she's a proper physiotherapist. Yeah. So anyway, that was 10 years ago. And somehow I never had a brain tumor. So that's my story. So imagine that happening to even if that happened to someone who isn't a hypochondriac, that would still be like bad. But the fact that it happened to me, it was like, wow. Yeah. So anyway, it was good to get that off my chest. Anyway, that was a bit weird. I won't, that went on too far like that, but yeah, that's the kind of thing. But I'm not like hypochondriac every day. It's just like occasionally. So it's not like a massive thing in my life. Yeah. Good story. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. It was a great story, actually. Great story. But what else do you want to talk about? Rise of the far right. Yeah. But yeah, as I was saying before, no, this is great. As I was saying before, I don't know if you remember, do you remember, do you remember some symptoms disorder, anxiety, illness disorder? Yeah. Some, do you remember Spike Milligan? Does anyone remember Spike Milligan? He was an English comedian. There's a guy called Spike Milligan. He's an English comedian. And in Australia, they used to have reruns of his TV show. And Spike Milligan, right? Spike, thank you. Spike Milligan was a comedian, English, who was also a hypochondriac. And he made his family put on his tombstone, see, I told you I was sick. Right. So I always love that. I always love that. That see, I told you I was sick because of course, as a hypochondriac, you're always telling people you're sick and they're telling you you're not. But obviously, eventually you will die, and then you can always come back and say, "See, I was right." So I love that. Yeah, that's my favorite line. And he actually did that, and he actually comes. He moved to Australia and retired in Australia, and that's how a lot of Australians know that. And I've been to his tombstone in near Sydney where he was, and literally it has it on the tombstone right there. See, I told you I was sick. I love it. I love it. English humor, I think, is the best humor in the world. In my opinion. In my opinion, yeah. But yeah, that's pretty much that. The original Nicole has come in, and she's probably wondering what's all this about, you know. came in to talk about politics, and this guy's talking about with a weird accent, and he's talking about being a hypochondriac. He sounds like Gallagher, Steve Wright, or Jay London. Exactly. What a way to make people laugh forever. Exactly. Yeah. 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 Exactly. Yep. I'm here. Yes. Yeah, yep. Um, yeah. Exactly. Yeah. But anyway, I'll go back into a little bit more sort of political stuff, and then I'll have to go. Then I have to go because it's almost midday here, and I have to go get some lunch. I'm a little bit hungry. Um, and but yeah, so I'll just finish on this. I think there is a rise of the far right wing around the world, and I think that a lot of this part of the reason. Can you imagine being a hypochondriac without healthcare coverage in America? You're sure you're dying, but you can't afford to get a second opinion. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, that would be bad. It would be bad. But you know what? Maybe that would actually help you, Jim, because if you don't have to seek reassurance all the time, I do believe I'm not that bad of a hypochondriac. Like I would be like mild compared to other people, but I do believe that if you have a severe case, or I don't know if it's real or not, but if you're really hypochondriac, there was a guy named Odd. He was teased his whole life. He was adamant that his tombstone be blank. A woman observed it and said, "That's odd, not my choice." Yeah, that's a good one. I like that. Yeah, yeah. Depends on what state you're in the US. Yeah. But I will say that if you're super hypochondriac, I think one of the best things to do is to actually not not go looking for second or third or fourth opinions, because what happens is you then sort of buy into it, right? So by not going to the doctors all the time, you're probably doing yourself um, you'll probably help yourself. It is bad. We need universal healthcare in the US. Yeah. Now, look, in Australia, I will say in Australia, we sure do. In Australia, we have a type of universal healthcare, but you can also get private. If you get private, you do get benefits. For example, you can go see a doctor faster. You can choose your own doctor. So you do get benefits from going private. If you do go public, it can be a bit slow. You know what I mean? You might have to wait to see a doctor. Not like a long time. Like if it's an emergency, no. But I'm just like if it's just like a normal checkup sort of thing. Um, so there are advantages to being private. Myself, I have private insurance because I can afford it, and I just like Blues and Bob. Yeah, so I like it. I like it doesn't cost a lot of money, but I get a lot more sort of flexibility in things that I can get with private healthcare. Our private healthcare is not tied to your job. So it's not like your job doesn't pay for it, you pay for it yourself. Yeah. So it's not about if you lose your job, you lose your insurance. Yeah. Always thought that was a bad thing because then you might feel obliged to stay in your job because you're worried about not that insurance not being there. I don't know. I've never lived in America. I have visited America before. So a lot of people, I have to say off Google when I'm sick, or I have to have it all. Yeah, that's right. I have to stay. Yeah, exactly. Tamara, I'm the same. I'm the same, Tamara. I refuse to go on Google. I will say, Tamara, there is a good way to look for things on Google, so you don't get bad things. So what you do is you Google, for example, you can Google sore throat, but nothing bad. And then if you say nothing bad or common, you can say sore throat, common symptoms or common reasons. And then they actually don't give you any of the bad reasons, right? So you can actually ask Google to only give you the most common things that aren't bad. Indeed, it's leveraged against the working and the middle class. Exactly. Yeah. Um, you're right. Yeah, exactly. Now, guys, I'm going to have to head off now. Nibbles and I probably going to go for a quick walk there. Uh, Job tied to insurance is inhumane. Yeah, I've never thought that was a great idea. Again, I've never lived in America, but for those people who've said, what are you talking about America time? You've never lived here. Well, just so you know, I actually did spend 24 hours in America at one stage. So for those of you who say, I don't know anything about it, I did spend 24 hours. Now, a lot of that time half of that time was in an airport, but you can see a lot from an airport. Do you know what I mean? You can see a lot. You can get an understanding of a country from looking through the window and looking outside into the country. And the 7 hours that I looked through that window at Washington Airport, I got an understanding that I think of that no other American could have got. You know, so again, if you criticize me for talking about America but don't know anything about it, I want you to think about that time that I spent 6 hours at the airport looking through a glass window, and I could see mostly taxis. I saw mostly taxis, but I think you can get a good understanding from taxis. Um, US, the original Nicole, US, concierge healthcare, and Project 25 A's one three of us, what is it? All three of us to leave or die. So it is corrupt fascist feeding. Yes, that's true. Yeah, that is so true. Yeah. Wow. That's crazy, Nicole. Well, if you ever want to interview, definitely Zelda. I'd love to interview. What when is this over and you enjoy Joe? You might like these folks. When this is over and you enjoy Joe, yeah, I will. I will. I'll watch that for sure. Nice meeting you, Neurodivergent. Nice meeting everyone. I have to go now. Thank you so much. Thank you, Nicole, the original Nicole. There's another Nicole here who's not as original, but she's original in her own way. Yeah, but just she's not actually called the original. Thanks, Zelda. Thank you so much. Thank you, Kimmy. Tamara, thank you so much. Blue Sky Levy, thank you so much, guys. Nicole A, two Nicoles, both as nice as each other. I'm not making, not taking, yeah. So thank you, Levy. Thank you so much, guys. Have a fantastic day. See you next time. Bye.